Hey there, my name is Kanisha Grayson. I'm founder and CEO of The Art of Applying. I have an MBA from Harvard Business School, an MPA from Harvard Kennedy School, and my team and I have helped over 1,000 paying clients get into Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard Business School, and lots of other top graduate schools with as much money as possible to pay for it. And even if you don't have amazing grades or an amazing test score, I am getting a lot of news this week and last week. Great news from my clients at The Art of Applying who are in our application accelerator. Great news from our members in our membership called The Art of Applying Academy. And lots of bad news in my inbox on LinkedIn and my inbox for email and our inbox for the company. Bad news from people who applied to their dream school. In this video, I'll focus on Harvard Kennedy School, and they didn't get in. And they felt like they did their best. They put together a great application. They're a great candidate, but they were rejected, sometimes for the first time, sometimes for the second time, and devastatingly, sometimes for the third time. The reason I say devastatingly is that you can only apply to Harvard Kennedy School 3 times to a particular degree. A lot of people don't know that. And I have sometimes people come to me who have already used up their 3 times on the degree that makes the most sense for them, or the only degree at Harvard Kennedy School that they can apply to, and they are devastated when I tell them and show them on the Harvard Kennedy School website that you can only apply to a degree 3 times. If you are not accepted in one of those times, then that's it. Like, your Harvard Kennedy School dream, at least for that degree, is over. And so I wanted to make this video to sort of update my very old but very popular video, Harvard Kennedy School Application Deal Breakers, and make a new Harvard Kennedy School Application Deal Breakers video. Or you can also think of this video as, how many do I have? 12. I have my little book where I wrote them all down. 12 reasons why you did not get into Harvard Kennedy School. I want you to listen to these reasons and see which ones apply to your application. And if you want our help with applying to Harvard Kennedy School or other top graduate schools in business, law, public policy, social work, public health, MFA, if you want me and my team's help, come see us at theartofapplying.com. You can see I hand wrote these reasons just off the top of my head because we help so many people apply to Harvard Kennedy School every year and for the last 14 plus years. And because I'm getting so many emails and DMs and stuff from people who are really like surprised and devastated they didn't get in. So I'm like, just off the top of my head, I already know what the most common problems are with people's Harvard Kennedy School applications because my clients have those problems in their applications in their first drafts, or let's say they're a reapplicant and we're looking over their Harvard Kennedy School application that got rejected from the first time when they didn't work with us. So I'm just very, very familiar with the types of problems that appear in grad school applications. And because Harvard Kennedy School is so many people's dream school around the world, I wanted to make this video specifically focused on Harvard Kennedy School and the 12 reasons why you did not get in. All right. They're not in any particular order. They're just in the order that they came out of my head. And I decided to make this video because I just recorded a success video with one of our members of the Art of Applying Academy who just got into 2 different PhD programs. So we just recorded her video and I'm like, if I got to put on pants, and the little bit of makeup I put on, y'all can see my eyebrows aren't done. It's like furry time over here. Eyebrows, furry eyebrows. That's what I meant. All right. 12 reasons you did not get into Harvard Kennedy School. Number 1 is you applied to the wrong degree program. I see this all the time. So if you are a great candidate and you apply to the wrong degree program, you played yourself. And there's no reason that needed to happen. So make sure that when you are applying to Harvard Kennedy School, you're applying to the correct degree program. What are the most common mistakes I see? Most commonly, I see people who are interested in kind of a casual way in international development, applying to the MPA ID at Harvard Kennedy School. In my opinion, the MPA ID is an extraordinary program, but it's also extraordinarily hard to get into, and there are very clear requirements for even being considered for admission, and then there are recommended courses and recommended preparation from Harvard Kennedy School. But so many people apply to MPA ID because they see international development in the title of the degree, and they don't realize that they don't actually meet the prerequisites for that degree. So that's the biggest one I see. Another one I see, not as often, but a mistake you don't want to make, is being an experienced professional, like let's say having 9+ years of work experience and applying to the MPP program at Harvard Kennedy School, which is their main, I would say kind of their flagship degree. It's the biggest one out of the different degrees. But if you've got 9+ years of work experience, that's not the right program for you to be applying to. You should be looking possibly at the MPA2 at Harvard Kennedy School and the mid-career MPA at Harvard Kennedy School, not the MPP. No matter how strong your application is, if you're applying to the wrong degree program, they're not going to go through the trouble of redirecting you to the right degree program. So that's the number one, is you applied to the wrong degree program. Don't do that. I do got to say, actually, we did have a client. This was a congressman from Mexico, a client who had already been rejected from Harvard Kennedy School. He was devastated and really surprised. I was not, because I see very fancy, accomplished people get rejected all the time because they didn't come together and they had some of these deal breakers. But we did work with him to apply to the mid-career at the Kennedy School. And to my surprise, but this was years ago, they did actually call him and say, before decisions came out, and said, can we move you over to be considered for the MPA2 program? And he said, yep, that's totally fine with me. He did get in, he did go, he did graduate, and I hope that he achieves all of the positive social, political, and economic impacts in Mexico that he plans to do. But I did want to tell that little side story to say that, like, I guess one person that I know of, they did ask if you want to be considered for the other program, but I have not heard of that happening since. I haven't had it happen since with my clients in general. Our clients that work with us to apply to Harvard Kennedy School, like, they get in. And they apply the right degree in the first place, and then they get in. All right, number 2 is you focused too much on your TET score and not enough on your essays. I say this all the time. The TET score is an important part of the application, but the way more important part is your essays, your narrative, your story, and your story is going to come together in your essay and your resume and your letters of recommendation. So that's 3 things versus 1 thing, which is the TET score. Like, if we want to put numbers together with TET score and GPA over here, and then over here is your essays, your letters of recommendation, and your resume, that's your story. And then I guess any interview you may have for a fellowship at school, because we want to get some money, right, to help pay for grad school. You focused way too much on your test score. So you studied and test prepped and retook the test and retook the test. And when I say the test, I mean like the GRE or perhaps the GMAT, over and over and over, single-mindedly, hyper-focused on getting some magical score that you feel like it's going to make up for your low GPA, or it's going to make up for the fact that you don't work at like the UN yet. And you overly focused on the test and you under-focused on your story. I said essays at the beginning of number 2, but we'll just say you under-focused on your story being your essays, your resume, your letters of recommendation, which all need to come together in a convincing, compelling, cohesive way. That is probably the biggest mistake that I see happen with people who are like, why didn't I get in? But I'm smart. I have good test score. Right, but so do hundreds of other people. The test score, think of it more like one data point. It's not the data point. Do not overly focus on the test. Start working on your story as early as possible. And if you think you want outside help, like from my team, get our help as early as possible. Don't wait until you have achieved that test score, because honestly, a lot of times for the type of person that feels like their butt is getting kicked by the test, I was that type of person, you usually don't actually have your score go way, way, way high than you did on your diagnosis. I see it all the time. And we can talk in a different video about what might be going on there, but I see it all the time. People spending so much time on their score. And I'm not saying at all that you shouldn't test prep or that you shouldn't get a test prep tutor, that you shouldn't take the test. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying let it take up an appropriate amount of brain space and time in your application process. And it should not be a stage gate. It should not be something that you have to check that box before you move on to the rest of your application. That is a losing strategy, regardless of if you're applying to the Kennedy School, top business schools, whatever. You need to simultaneously work on test prep while beginning to map out your application strategy. And if it turns out you're the type of person who's going to need to take the test 3 times, which totally fine. I only gave myself enough time to take the GMAT once, and I don't recommend that. That's when I was applying to business school, and I didn't do well. I got a 620, which is the exact score I got on day one before 6 months of diligent, self-study. If you are not a person who is already scoring in the 600s on the GMAT or the equivalent of 600 on the GMAT on your practice GMATs or your practice GREs, the test is not where you are going to shine. Do not waste months and months and months and months beating your head against the wall, trying to get a better score on the test and then saying, well, then I'll move on to the rest. Like, get help with your application, essays, resume, letters of recommendation. Be working on those things while you take the test multiple times. All right, number 3. You didn't explain nor mitigate the negative effect of your low test score. Okay, so let's say you have a low test score and you applied with it anyway, which is what I did. That 620 popped up on the screen and I was like, well, yes, I'm applying to Harvard with a 620. We'll see what happens. So you may have applied with your low score, but you didn't explain the low score and you didn't mitigate the negative effect on your application or on your application package. You just hoped they wouldn't notice and you just applied with the low score with no explanation, no mitigation. That's also similar to my number 4 is you didn't explain nor mitigate the negative effects of your low GPA. By a low GPA, I'm going to say anything under 3.5. Of course, there's also what I'll call very low GPA, which will be anything below 3.0. I will tell you right now, we have helped people with GPAs below 3.0, below 2.9, and just keep going below. I have to look it up, but I know we helped someone get into Columbia SEPA for policy school, and their GPA was like 2.5. I'm like, what grades is that even to be a 2.5? But he got in. So we'll call a very low GPA anything under 3.0, but a low GPA anything under 3.5. And you just applied with those C's, those 2 C's on your transcript with no explanation. You just applied with the W on the 3 W's on your transcript, hoping that nobody asks you about it. That's not what we do. You have to explain it and you got to mitigate it. And that's what we will help you with if you are a client or a member or just good at Googling and just Google on my website and read it for free. Okay, so number 5, your essay covered too much ground rather than telling one story well, if it was a tell me about a time when type essay, or it covered too much ground rather than making one compelling argument well. You're hoping that if you just like take this bucket of stuff you want to tell them and that you just kind of put it all in all your essays and tell them as much as you can in every single essay, that like now you haven't missed anything and they got what they wanted, but it actually misses the mark. Essays where they say, tell me a story or tell me about a time when means they want one story, not 4. Little micro stories barely told. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You'd be surprised by how many essays I read that do not have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then the argument essays, when I say argument, I just literally mean any sort of essay that has a main idea that we are driving towards. So if the essay is asking you about your career vision, and you are just all over the place instead of kind of taking us through your short-term, mid-term, and ultimate career vision, that is going to be an application deal breaker. Next, your career goals in your essays were not specific nor ambitious enough. It needs to be something that is ambitious enough to be inspiring while being believable based on your past accomplishments. And it doesn't have to be the same industry that you've come from. If you've always been in the public, you don't have to stay in the public sector. If you've always been in government, you don't have to stay in government. It's not like that, but it does need to be clear, compelling, specific, inspiring, ambitious, and believable, okay? I also want to say we have helped lots and lots of people from the private sector get into Harvard Kennedy School, private equity people, venture capitalists. I mean, one guy was just like, I'm the king of fracking. And he didn't call himself the king of fracking. I just thought of him as the king of fracking. And I was like, ooh, he got in. So like, it is not about I'm a consultant or I work in investment banking. That's why they didn't let me in. No, you did one of the 12 things, one of the application deal breakers. Your application didn't come together into a way that was what they were looking for. So now number 7 is your resume was too short and it was boring to read. Yes, I said too short. Of course, we know for business school, we want to have a nice, clean one-page resume. But for policy school, your resume can be like 2 to 4 pages long. It does need to be very nicely formatted, plenty of white space, not using tiny text. And also don't include things just for the sake of including things. In general, I find that the people who don't get into Harvard Kennedy School and are super duper surprised about it or super devastated and like, what? But I'm amazing. And you are, is that their resume was too short. I'm not saying the things they've actually done aren't enough. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they've left out some really cool stuff that they could have included had they known that Kanisha of the Art of Applying gives you permission to have a 2 to 4 page resume as long as it's well formatted. And if you have more than 10 years of work experience, and as long as Harvard Kennedy School does not tell you otherwise, I give you permission to have a resume that's up to 5 to 7 pages if that's what it takes to show them everything you've done. Make sure you use headers, make sure you use sections. When I say boring to read, I mean, once again, it wasn't specific. You didn't quantify the results of your efforts. You didn't give us context, not just what you did at your job, but why was it important to the organization, to the team? What was the cost savings, or what was the increased efficiency, or what was the increased literacy rate? Because we have limited resources when we are aiming to make social change and improve the public good. And those limited resources must be deployed in the most efficient, effective ways. And the only way that's going to happen is if we measure, right? And we evaluate. And you need to show that I am a person who measures the results of my efforts. I don't just type on the computer and then be like, clock out at work, but I actually endeavor to either find out or to estimate what the quantified result of my efforts was. So your resume was too short and it was boring to read. Number 8, you submitted an application to Harvard Kennedy School just to see what happens. And now you've seen what happens, which is you got rejected. And I'm sorry that that happened, but I also get very frustrated when people apply just to see what happens. And I don't mean don't try new things, but when it comes to where you're going to spend the next 1 to 2 years for graduate school, do not just throw your hat in the ring to see what happens. You want to submit an application that represents your very best effort, right? Like the best essays you could have written, the strongest letters of recommendation that could be submitted on your behalf, the most clear, quantified, beautiful to look at, and I don't mean fancy graphic design, I just mean nice and balanced to look at, resume, your strongest test score, your best action plan that you have undertaken to mitigate either a low GPA or a low test score or both. Maybe you don't have either of those, but your action plan that you've taken outside of just making good grades and having a strong test score to demonstrate your preparedness for the rigorous Harvard Kennedy School classroom. Okay, so if you applied just to see what would happen, we know that that strategy doesn't work. Don't do it again. You get 3 chances. Do not waste chance number 2 or chance number 3 by like throwing your hat in the ring again. Apply with the strongest application possible. Number 9, letters of rec. Yes, your letters of rec were written by fancy, senior, or even famous, or even heads of state. So people who don't know you well. And they wrote vague, unconvincing letters. I see this all the time. I have read letters from heads of state. I have read recommendation letters from I guess they are royalty, like Your Highness, the whatever. I go and Google them to be like, ooh, who is Your Highness? And I've read letters from really high up business people, whatever. And the thing that all those letters have in common with a rejected application on which me and my team are doing a ding analysis, which is where you like go thoroughly through an application to see like what went wrong and write up recommendations for a reapplication, is these really vague letters that are either written by the applicant themselves and they didn't even do a good job writing their own letter, or written by the person's executive assistant, or maybe written by the person themselves, but they weren't specific, they didn't give examples, they are enthusiastically recommending the person, but it's an empty recommendation. And you're not impressing Harvard with an empty, soulless, vague letter of recommendation, no matter who it's from. Your letters of recommendation need to be from people who know you well, know your work well, what kind of professional you are, what kind of person you are, and can give specific examples and stories to back up the nice things they're saying about you. All right, so number 10, you didn't draw a connection between your past experiences and accomplishments, your present work experiences and your personal experiences of the present, and your future goals, your future professional, academic, and personal goals. You were not able to tie the thread between those three stations. You either overly focused on the past, telling them all the things you've done, or you overly focused on the future, telling them all the things you'll be able to do if they'll just let you in, and you didn't actually draw what I would call a golden thread that connects them. It is totally fine, and I even kind of like it. If you've moved around a lot, or if you've had a lot of different experiences that kind of look jumbly and kind of like a mess and like they don't go together. But I like that because it's like a puzzle for me and my team. And we find the way, like, how do we put this puzzle together and make it a beautiful work of art? Of course, with you doing the work and us advising you and giving you expert guidance. So I always want to make that clear. We have really amazing, outstanding results, but we don't do the work for you. You're going to have to write your essays, but we're going to be there to help you edit them over and over and over until they're amazing, and also help you figure out which of the 10 stories you should tell before you even start writing. So just understand that, like, you don't have to show up on your first draft as this like perfectly polished person who's always known since the age of 7 that they wanted to be the Minister of Transportation of India. Well, that's not true, right? Because 7-year-olds don't know what that is. 7-year-olds want to be like a fire truck when they grow up. But you do need to be able to take all those different experiences from all those different sectors, geographies, industries, whatever, and be able to tie a golden thread to make it cohesive and understandable and compelling for the admissions committee to buy into your vision for what you will accomplish and the good that you will contribute to the world if they give you one of the cherished spots in the incoming class. All right, number 11, you didn't have a clear demonstrated interest and commitment to advancing the public good. So if you work in the private sector, you're going to need to show, how does the work that you've done in the private sector advance the public good at all? Or how could the skills and resources and connections you've gained in the private sector be deployed to solve public problems and advance the public good? Or what have you done in your free time, right? What will you do? But if you are just saying, hey, I'm a good person, please let me into your school, that's not compelling, because lots of people applying to Harvard Kennedy School have amazing test scores, amazing grades, strong essays, strong letters of recommendation, compelling work experience. And when you put yourself alongside theirs in the application, digital application pile, you need to be able to show, hey, I may work in the private sector, I may even work in a controversial industry, but I have advocated within my controversial industry for more sustainable practices, and I plan to transition into a more earth-friendly or whatnot, people-friendly, humanitarian career path. But it has to be demonstrated. It can't just all be future stuff you'll one day do. There's also got to be some evidence of you being interested in the public good throughout your career thus far. It does not have to be your main career. All right, so those are the 12 Harvard Kennedy School application deal breakers. I'll rattle them off again in no particular order. They're just the order that they came out of my head and onto this paper. The 12 reasons you didn't get into Harvard Kennedy School. You applied to the wrong degree program. Stop doing that and stop submitting applications. You get 3 chances. You focus too much on your test score and not enough on your essays. You didn't explain nor mitigate the negative effect of your low test score. You didn't explain nor mitigate the negative effect of your low GPA. Your essay covered too much ground rather than telling the story well or making one argument well. Your resume was too short and it was boring to read. Your career goals weren't specific nor ambitious enough. You applied just to see what would happen rather than when your application was the strongest. Your letters of ref were written by fancy senior or even famous people who don't know you well. They wrote vague, unconvincing letters. You didn't draw a connection between your past, present, and future experiences and accomplishments and your future goals. 11, you didn't have a clear demonstrated commitment to advancing the public good. Oh, I never shared number 12. And 12, you didn't get the help that you needed. So you might need help with staying organized. You might need help with which order should I tackle the application in. You might need help with figuring out if you should take supplemental coursework, and if so, which courses to take. You might need help with how to explain that really bad semester on your transcript. You might need help with figuring out which of your stories to tell. You might need help with staying encouraged throughout the application process. You just don't know what you don't know. That is why in my own life, I have coaches and I have professionals I pay. I have a certified financial planner that I work with. I have a real estate agent, right? I'm constantly investing in myself and learning and turning to experts. If you have a big goal that you're going for, something that could change your life forever, that it's important to reach out for help early and be willing to invest in yourself. And so that was my 12th reason, is you didn't get the help you needed. And so if you are recognizing yourself in these Harvard Kennedy School application deal breakers and maybe able to apply these to your Harvard Kennedy School application that just got rejected or waitlisted, or to any of your other top graduate school, because these can be applied to other schools, these principles or deal breakers. If you are recognizing yourself in there and you're like, I deserve to get help, please reach out to us. I had a friend who I went to college with bring her husband, who I also went to college with, to have a call with our team about working together on his applications. And I was really surprised. I'm like, we went to the same college. Like, why would you pay to join the application accelerator? Like, clearly we all went to the same school for undergrad. And she's like, because you don't get points for doing it the hard way. And that's what I think as well. So if you are going for top school, whether it's Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard Business School, Harvard Law School, or any other school, whether it's an Ivy League school or not, and you want to give yourself the best chance possible of getting in and the support that you deserve for the application process, please come visit us at theartofapplying.com. Let's have a call and let's achieve some dreams together and change the world together. All right, thanks for watching. Please subscribe so I can make more videos like this and continue to support you on your application journey.